on, guys? Welcome back to the Gaelic Gridiron podcast. Delighted to be joined by a new friend of mine, Mr. Rockne O'Leary from Philadelphia. Rock, how are you?
I'm great, man. Thank you. How are you today?
How's your day going over there in Philly?
It's good. The last week it was nice and warm, so we got a little taste of spring going in, the nicer weather, the sun was out. And today it's kind of cold. So I got used to that warm weather pretty quickly. Now I'm a little upset that it's in the 30s, low 40s. But the sun's out, so I can't complain too much.
It sounds a lot like Ireland at the minute, very temperamental weather-wise. So you'll fit right in when you come over. Rock, before we get into it, I suppose, and obviously you and I know each other, and we've chatted before, but for those listening and watching, can you give us a bit of background about yourself and what it is you do?
Yeah, so currently I'm a sport performance coach. I predominantly work with youth and high school athletes, just training for sport, teaching kids, sprint mechanics, proper strength and conditioning methods, things like that. And so I started doing that, and then just as part of like my own journey, one of the sides that I'm extremely passionate about is the mental and emotional and self connection side of things, which I think with kids, sometimes gets overlooked. It's all about the training and the running and scoring goals and developing your skill and things like that, which is really important. But when I look back on what my experience was as an athlete, that was part of my experience that lacked, that I
Mm.
missed out on, the emotional and the mental piece that I didn't really dive into for various reasons, which we can get into.
Mm.
But now, in my coaching career and with what I do with kids and young athletes, that's kind of what I'm looking to dive into
Yeah.
more as my career progresses.
So we connected a couple of weeks ago through our mutual friend Chris Bradley. God love that man. He's a great man, and
He's a
while we
good
were
guy.
he's a great guy. He's a great guy. Shout out Chris Bradley if you're listening. I'm sure he is. Hopefully, um, but speaking of that whole mental and emotional thing, which is obviously so crucial now in the development of youth athletes. You mentioned this new project you were working on. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so my new coaching program is called Man in the Glass Coaching, and I'll be clear that it's not just for men. That's just what the name of the poem is. So the program, I work with both male and female athletes, but the program's really designed through taking youth and high school athletes, predominantly high school athletes, on sort of their own experiential transformation journey, where they kind of just are able to connect with themselves, build some confidence, create sort of a vision, and experience and ask themselves some insightful and thoughtful questions that I think is going to be really beneficial as they start to go through their career in high school and then maybe on to college. That they're going to develop skills that they're going to have kind of in their toolbox that they're going to be able to use for the rest of their lives, right? And there, as it progresses, there's going to be physical training involved, because I do really think that the physical training is a gateway into the mental and the emotional and the spiritual kind of connection that we have with ourselves. Um, but that's what the main focus of the program is going to be. It's not really going to be like, I'm going to be telling you what to do. These are discoveries and say like light bulb moments that you're going to create for yourself,
Yeah.
because that's really sort of the only way that it works. When I'm coaching somebody, I'm not really like an authoritarian on what their experiences are, how they're feeling. Like I don't know. The best I can do is just try and put myself in their shoes, but almost just be a guide for
Yeah.
them in those in those kind of ways. So like, the way the structure would work is, for example, say I had a group of 10 people that want to start with the program. There's going to be a one-on-one coaching session, right? Where me and the athlete will, create the coach athlete relationship. We'll build some trust. We'll get to know each other. And through those coaching sessions, right, I'll ask some insightful questions and challenge the athlete to kind of think, more about themselves, what their limiting beliefs are, what their personal story is, what some of their experiences that maybe shape, what goes into their preparation, or, how they act on the field when things don't go their way, or, whether they're not getting playing time, and where are all these things coming from, and how are you going to handle those situations? And then on top of that, there's going to be a call with everybody. So the whole group will get together, and, everybody will participate, and we'll start to create some sort of connection and community with everybody in the program. So that's kind of what the structure and my hope for the program is going to be.
So I suppose it's taking the traditional approach of training and kind of lumping everyone in together, and everyone doing the same drills, or everyone doing the same process, and really delving down into I suppose, the kind of, maybe more so the more kind of spiritual and mental side of things. Would that be kind of accurate? That
Yeah,
the
it's
kind of
definitely, yeah, totally.
a holistic approach to youth athletics.
Yeah, and it's definitely not a traditional approach, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of something where, you know, taking something that I don't think most people are really working with kids and high school athletes on.
Mm.
Everybody wants to sell you, I can make your athlete faster, stronger, and all of those kind of things. I can get them to shoot faster on, their shot, or something like that. But what about, really connecting with the athlete and being and giving them, you know, their own tools, because really at some point it ends for everybody,
Mm.
and it happened to me personally, where like you really just defined your identity and your purpose as your sport. And then as soon as it ends, you have to go on into life doing something that's not playing that sport. And that was something that I really struggled with. And, when I look back, if I would have had these certain skills and maybe techniques and processes and, you know, ways of looking at things and perspective as a younger athlete, particularly in college, really. But I think it would have really helped me during those times when I was playing.
So is that where the inspiration for this new approach and your new endeavor has come from? Is from your own experiences as an athlete throughout, youth leagues, high school football, into college? Is it kind of you seeing, okay, this was lacking in my experience, so this is something that I think can be beneficial to the youth athletes that I'm coaching?
Absolutely, yeah. Because and one of the areas that I really struggled with was like confidence and really like self belief. And so, I never, in school and stuff, I never thought that I wasn't like an A+ student. I worked hard, I did my homework and all of those things, but I wasn't someone that like excelled on tests,
Mm.
or um, was getting straight A's all the time. And so what had then happened was, I almost created like an identity of like, oh, I'm not smart, right? And so then, because I created, that was what my story was. I told myself the story that I wasn't really good in school. So because I'm not good in school, I'm not smart, right? And
Yeah.
then there was a lot of comparison to that, because, you know, what do most coaches, and they all tell you that you got to do good in school, make sure you're getting your homework done, make sure you're studying for the test, which is true. You need to do all of those things because they're beneficial. However, sometimes we're so focused on whatever that letter says, whether it's an A, B, or C, and we're not taking into consideration all of the work that's
Yeah.
being put in. So we're really focused on what the outcome of a test is. And because I wasn't getting, straight A's on tests, I just told myself that I wasn't smart and I didn't have these skills to do anything. So that made me attach myself more to being a football player. Well, what happens now when things go wrong in your sport, right? And you don't have any other beliefs and confidence about yourself to hold on to, right? So you think you're now defined as, whatever success you have on the field, whatever stats you're putting up, or, what the coaches are saying about you. Maybe if you're reading, what the newspapers are saying about you and things like that. And if those things aren't going well, plus you're not getting, you know, the results in whatever story you're telling yourself about you off the field, how are you going to handle that?
Yeah.
What then becomes your self-talk? How are you talking to yourself? Do you have any confidence that, you're going to get out of this, or, anything like that? And there's a whole list of things that it could be. It's not just necessarily one thing. That's kind of just my personal story. And then, if we went through it with you, it might be a different story or somebody else. But it's really kind of, some self-acceptance on some of those things and diving into that. And,
I'm curious about well, you gave me the background of the concept and the name behind the whole thing, the man in the glass. But for people listening, I'm sure they'd be curious to know where that came from. So if you can tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, so the man in the glass. So at my high school, there was an award that they created. There was a kid on our team who he was a few years older than me, but then he had died of a drug overdose, and so the family came together and wanted to create this award for the football program, which honored, good decision making and integrity and all of those qualities. And what was really cool about the award is that it could only be won by a senior, and it was only voted on your senior class by your senior class teammates,
Yeah.
which I thought was really cool. And I was very fortunate enough to win that award, and still to this day probably is the most thing I'm proud of accomplishing, to be viewed at by like my best friends and my peers, as someone that was a good decision maker and had good integrity. And I kind of held those beliefs with the message of the poem, as almost like, and I adopted it as like a personal philosophy, right?
Yeah.
And I used that to kind of get me through some of the more challenging and lower points in my life, and I still have that poem. It's in my room framed. And I think about it all the time, what that message is. And so as I started to progress throughout my coaching career, the strength and conditioning was great, and teaching kids all of those things. But then when I started to really figure out what was meaningful about it, it wasn't teaching a kid how to run faster or how to squat more. It was more about the connection and the impact that I was able to make with the athletes that I train, and hopefully, be someone that can inspire them to just be the best version of themselves,
Yeah.
and always strive for that. Because one of the lines in the poem is, you know, um, you can fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get pats on the back as you pass, but the final reward is heartbreaking tears if you cheated the man in the glass. And a lot of times,
I'm actually getting shivers as you're saying that. Like I read the poem after we talked, and it's like it really is like it's such like it's so inspirational is overused as a word, but like it does speak to you, I think.
yeah, and it's like, you can fool everybody else, and it's, realistically not that hard to cover up some of those things. But at the end of the day, the person that you got to be friends with, the person you got to be able to look into the mirror and accept, is yourself. And we hear those sayings all the time. It's like, that's the person you can't get away from, is
Yeah.
yourself. So it's all about having some self acceptance, and really befriending yourself. And that's kind of where the inspiration for the coaching program came from, and I thought it was an awesome name as
Yeah.
well to make the name of the coaching program, Man in the Glass Coaching. And I think it's even cool. You could, Girl in the Glass Coaching as well. I think that flows really
Yeah.
nice.
So
Um,
obviously, I mean, you've played sports for most of your life. Obviously, you mentioned football there. You played throughout high school in Garnet Valley, and then you also played in college as well briefly, I believe. So what drew you to coaching? What when you were being coached or playing sports, did something just click and say, okay, I know what I want to do with my life. I want to be a coach.
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And this was like, I kind of went through some of this stuff later on, after I had graduated college. And so I thought I really wanted to be like I was a business and economics major in college. I thought I wanted to be in finance. And, it kind of goes back again to, I just identified as a football player. And
Yeah.
I'm really big on journaling, and that's been a really powerful tool for me. And I have some of my earliest journal entries I have written down. This was like as soon as I graduated college. Things like, I'm just looking to find something that I liked as much as football. I, want to be able to give that much attention, energy, and effort to something,
Hmm.
right? And it wasn't, it definitely wasn't in finance. I mean, I even remember being at when I was in college, or maybe it was a year or two after I graduated. There was like an alumni networking event at one of my old professor's house. And I remember talking to some guy, and the first question he had asked me was, "What was your GPA?" And I said, it might have been like a 2.6. Like, it wasn't very good. And then he was like, "Yeah, he was like, you're probably should get out of finance if you're not smart enough or something." He
It's a
literally
bit
said that.
rude.
And this guy was like, this guy had to be in his like 50s, and I was like, 25, telling me that, I was like, yeah, this is a real great networking event. Thanks for telling me that. And now, and like, I never forgot that,
Yeah.
and it was always kind of motivating me to be like, yeah, I don't need to have a 4.0 to make an impact
Yeah.
for, I'm just not, this is what I was meant to do. My purpose wasn't meant to be to work on Wall Street or a financial planner, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, that's what I tried to do after college, because that's what my degree was in. And then COVID hit, right? And I had a lot of time to kind of do some self-reflection, and I was working a job that I liked, but I liked mainly because I was working with my best friend, and we just had a lot of fun together, And I remember sitting there thinking like, yeah, this can't be it, Um, and in the middle of COVID, my mom's a physical therapy doctor and a vestibular specialist. And I remember just sitting there, and I called her. I was like, "Mom, I want to come work for you." And I made my decision based off of like what kind of my values were. And my parents are amazing, and they've given me literally like everything, and been an amazing support system.
Including a pretty cool name. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
you don't
right.
meet a lot of Rockneys around the place, to be fair.
No, I've met like one or two, but they all kind of have the same story. Just, big Notre Dame fans.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, going back on, I was like, what's the best way that I could even begin to repay, you know, what my parents have given me. And it would have been to, go work for my mom and continue to try and help grow and be a part of her business, and continue like, the family business, right? And so in the middle of COVID, where I was in a pretty secure job where they weren't going to like get rid of anybody,
Yeah.
and everything was like really uncertain, I was like, yeah, I'm cool. I'm out. I'm done. And I just went to work. I went to work for my mom. And that was it. And that was it. From there, I started to get into working with people, and I started off just kind of working with some of her patients, and I had a pretty good background just from some self-study and personal experience, just working, how to train and do some things like that. And then, again, it was still COVID, so I had a lot of time to learn, and I did a ton of self-study, and I just became like obsessed with it. And
Mm.
I just started connecting, meeting people, and learning as much as I possibly could, because I was like, I want to be really good at this
Yeah.
in terms of training, training. And there was a huge learning curve that I had to get over, because I didn't go to school for like exercise science or any of that. So I had to put in some serious study. And as I started to do that, things started to happen, and I was consistently doing stuff. I was getting my coaching reps up. I was trying to train anybody that I could. Um, and I started to build some confidence and things like that. Um, and that's kind of how I got into it.
So kind of
And
you kind of, I wouldn't say you fell into it, but it wasn't your, what it was almost a calling where you made a conscious decision to move away from a secure job into something you had more passion for, and clearly something that you that you clearly love.
yeah, and because it was like, I always loved, what was the closest thing that I could get to, again, playing football was, the closest thing normally would be like you go coach.
Yeah,
And I did start coaching football, but I didn't want to be a football coach.
yeah.
And so the next place that was, you know, where I always liked to be was the gym and working out. And that was always the place that gave me confidence, and I felt good about myself. There wasn't any insecurities when I was working out, right? And from there, which is why I think the physical is such a good gateway to go into the mental and the spiritual and the emotional, is kind of how I started to get into all that stuff. And that's kind of where, it ended up, and I started to get better at coaching, right? Not training people. I started to get better at coaching people, connecting with people. And that's kind of how, like you mentioned, like I found my passion,
Yeah.
right? And then I used my passion, which I believe is different than what my purpose is.
Hmm.
So I used my passion as the way to get going. And then as I kept developing and putting effort and energy towards my passion, I then found my purpose, which is different, right? My passion
Oh
is
yeah. But
is
that, I mean,
training.
but it's clearly fuel. I mean, one clearly fuels the other, and vice versa. I mean, that's a great way of describing it. Is like your passion is, you know, is coaching, or is being an athlete or a former athlete, but your purpose is this, is the man on the glass, right?
Yeah, and my purpose is to help people live in alignment with themselves,
Yeah.
love themselves, create that relationship, be able to look at the man or the girl in the glass and, be like, I accept you. Right. Um, and that is what my purpose is to help others kind of go through along whatever their journey looks like, to be able to create that harmonious relationship with themselves.
And what are some of the major, or if you could pick like one or two biggest learnings or lessons that you have, I suppose, taken on board from your time doing this, what would they be?
Hmm. Um, I think one of the biggest ones is that you have to do the work. It doesn't just,
Yeah. Got to put in that grind.
you have to sit and you have to just spend time with yourself. So I think solitude is really important to start to figure those things out. And the other one would be that journaling is probably the biggest, was the best technique, at least for me. That's going to be different for everybody, but for me, journaling was sort of the biggest technique where I was able to learn about myself. Um, And so I hope that answers the question.
No, absolutely. That's fantastic. I mean, it's such a cool concept, and I really hope that anyone listening, be they, I mean, it's universal, right? People don't have to be specifically in America to be coached by yourself, right? You could do it online. So if this resonates with people, then I hope you get some contacts out of it. Rockne, before we finish up, I always like to finish with a fun question. Obviously, you're a Philadelphia man. You're an Eagles fan, which I'm not going to hold against you. I know enough Eagles fans, but obviously, you know, free agency recently has been absolutely crazy. And in particular, we had Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles, your Birds. Like, we did that just blow your mind when you saw that news coming through?
You know, over the last couple of years, it's like the Eagles are always making some sort of move. So I guess I could say I wasn't really surprised.
Yeah,
Am I happy we have him? Absolutely. Um, and so I think we got a good squad. We got playmakers on offense everywhere. I also am really happy about the Gardner Johnson re-signing. I think that he was great for us was when he was on the team. We went to the Super Bowl against the Chiefs.
yeah,
So I'm excited about that signing too. I can't wait for football season.
I know. That makes two of us.
Yeah,
Can't wait
right,
for August already, August and September.
right. It's the best time of year, and so for the Eagles and for Notre Dame as well.
Mm,
Notre Dame is looking good on the recruiting end, and at least my family, we're big Eagles fans, right? We have season tickets to the Eagles, but we're bigger Notre Dame fans.
yeah.
So that's Notre Dame's always number one. So Saturdays during football season, there's nothing like it.
Well, we've been talking about catching a game together up in South Bend. Hopefully, we can make that happen this year. In the meantime, I mean, people can log on to Man in the Glass social media website to find out more.
Yeah.
Is that
So
something?
the best way to get in touch with me is probably Instagram. My Instagram tag is at
Yeah.
Rock Valeri. I try to be on there and post some content. I got to get a little better at that. But I do respond. So if anybody reaches out to me, I will respond. I do check it. And then my website is maxmuscle.net.
And
Um,
we'll put those in the show description as well. And listen, Rockney, thank you so much for coming on. Like, it's such a cool story. I really love to see what you're doing, and I'm so excited to see where you go. So, best of luck, and we'll catch up soon.
all right, man. Thank you for having me on. I feel super grateful to have had this conversation and just to be able to speak to your audience.
It's always a pleasure, and hopefully catch you in Ireland soon.
Yes, I got to get back over ASAP.